Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Inside Town Hall. I'm your host, Madeline Shields. Every few months, we invite several city councilors to come in for a roundtable discussion. And joining me this time are Kurt Sale, Rick Kiley, Christine Erickson, and Janet Brecky. Thanks for being here for our roundtable discussion. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get to it. The very first topic is about bonding for Metro 911 and other training facilities in Sioux Falls. Let's start with you.
Well, thank you. I'll cover the Metro 911 portion, and I'll leave the other information to my colleagues. But currently, Metro Management is located in a space that they have outgrown. The current primary center, which is located in downtown Sioux Falls, is equipped with 11 stations and then 2 partially equipped stations. And we really have a need for 20 stations. So we've outgrown the space. It's in the old jail building. Remodeling that is not cost effective. And we have actually looked into that, as well as relocating to other facilities. Another issue with the current site is it does not meet the ICC 500 standings, which are construction standards that are put in place for PSAPs, for public safety answering points. And the problem with that is, if it doesn't meet those standards, that could potentially impact our fire rating, our ISO #1 fire rating, which establishes insurance premiums throughout the community. So it could adversely impact the insurance premiums too. So if Metro 911 is remodeled, we would still at the very least have to build a new backup center, because our current backup center is woefully inadequate. It only has 6 stations, and those are using not up-to-date equipment. I hate to say outdated because it still functions, but it's not the same equipment that they use in the primary. So they're forced to go from one system to a different system, and it's less than half the size. And the tornadoes this past September and the flooding earlier in the year illustrated the need for a fully functioning 911 system. It really pushed it to its limits.
Sure, and that's part of the growing pains of our city. And let's go around the table and talk a little bit about all of these facilities that need updating.
You know, this has been talked about for years and years and years. You know, we have a former city attorney and a former firefighter. So as we sit here today, and their history and their knowledge of what needed to be changed and upgraded throughout the years is really such a huge asset to this council. And so it's interesting learning from each and every councilor, your background with it. Councilor Kiley has been involved in the Metro 911 board and really solidifying this facility with other members of that board as well. I'm a new member, and so I'm kind of learning the ropes with that. But in this bonding, we're talking about several different components. The River Greenway, which we'll talk about Sioux Steel later, and how that will complement it. A new fire station that is needed, as well as a training facility. And so all of this in a package really is moving Sioux Falls forward and really making sure that we've got those training facilities that are needed for our employees and keeping people in those jobs and retaining them.
You know, just a little bit about the fire training. If you know the location, it's out in the airport grounds proper. When it was built, there was a lot less security that was needed. Today, you got to travel through a lot of security to get on the airport grounds. So it's in a bad location to start with today. And it's antiquated, and the burn tower has been condemned. You know, I personally started fires in there for training, and you cannot start a fire that's 2,000 degrees in a concrete building for very long before it starts to fall apart. So combining the new fire training center with the police training center and then bringing in 911 Metro to that same location, it just makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. Now, it's going to be a heavy lift for us because we're looking at approximately $40 million or somewhere in there. We're wait to see what the final numbers are going to come around. But it's the right thing to do. And by securing the land, what they've already done, and it's very close, they're in the city limits, and it's a great location for it to go forward. We're all very excited to see that go. I think there's going to be unanimous support on the council for the bonding, including the River Greenway. The one thing I'm very hopeful for in the next few months is we get the end of the year numbers from the city finance staff that we know we're going to have a surplus. How big that surplus is going to be, we're not sure. I'm really hoping that we can take the construction of the fire station out of the bonding, put it back to use the surplus money to pay for the fire station, and we can go right ahead. Because if we have surplus and we then turn around and borrow money, it does not make financial sense to me. So that's what I'm hoping for in the future. We got our fingers crossed that there's going to be enough money to make it, but it's a great step forward for Sioux Falls.
I would just add that really the bond is just keeping up with our growth and the expectations, for providing the services that we're required to provide. And particularly with the Metro 911 issue, I was just telling my fellow council members as we were gathering, 14 years ago when I left, they were pitching that change, that needed to be changed and modified. And as a safety, I said Metro 911, it was actually the fire training center, that they were pitching that needing to be changed to the CIP committee. Then there was a CIP committee for a capital improvement project, and they said it was outdated and unsafe at the time. So I come back 14 years later and go, what? We're still talking about this? So for me, it became a priority right away, that needed to be done. And then the way everything is wrapping into it and coming out, it just feels like a perfect storm. It just absolutely, now is the time. It's well past the time, but it's happening in the right way and at the right time right now, and it needs to be a priority in getting it through. And then the other items, the River Greenway, and Metro 911, all of those, again, just tie into our growth and keeping up with our growth. And I would add to what Councilmember Kiley said, it's not only our insurance rating, but it's our bond rating, because our bond rating is tied to our insurance rating. So that becomes an issue as well. So it's just a perfect timing, and I agree, I think there's going to be a favorable response to it.
And I do believe that it is very important that we move out of the current center that we're using, the primary center. Use the current primary center as our backup. Build a new primary. Because otherwise we're investing in a remodel of a building that doesn't meet standards, and it'll never meet standards, and then forced to build a new backup. So it just makes sense to build a new primary, use the existing site as our backup. Metro Communications, I refer to it as the tip of the spear, meaning that it is the first step in the emergency response process. If that call does not go through to Metro 911, it's not relayed then to police, to fire, to the sheriff's department, to ambulance. So if it doesn't function there, this is really a public safety issue. And as I mentioned, we've been stressed to our limits. Also, with a new facility, it would give us the opportunity to collaborate with other PSAPs in the area, counties that are surrounding us, as well as the state patrol. And we see that happening already nationwide. It would also bring in additional revenue for us, and then it would be more cost effective actually for all parties involved. So there's just a lot of different positives that come out of this.
Sure. If I could just dovetail into that, and then the second piece, your police and fire training. If you believe that public safety, and supporting your police and fire is one of your primary issues, which I believe we do, it's more about than just hiring new officers. Their training, and the way the world has changed, and their need for updated and state-of-the-art training, it's huge. And truly, you are not supporting your police and fire if you don't keep up with their training needs and what they're facing in both of those institutions in the world today. So this is really equally important on that level as well.
Sure. Did you have something?
I just, one thing, the 911 Metro Center is a cost share with the county, which is, currently the city's about 75% of the pay, and county's about 25%. So as we build a new center, those discussions will go on too, and hopefully the county, we know how cash strapped that they might be, but they're gonna come to the plate too. So we're not carrying the whole ball when it goes for the 911 part.
Is that just Minnehaha County, or does that include Lincoln County as well?
Currently, it's just Minnehaha County, but There have been discussions in the past with not only Lincoln County, but the counties to the west and to the north too, and even with the state patrol. So that would just bring in additional revenue sources, and it would help to spread the cost more broadly than just the city of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County.
And again, I would add with regard to the training center, that's also true. It's primarily for, the city of Sioux Falls, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be managing it. But it will be an asset to the whole region, because there will be opportunities for people to come in and train, our smaller regional communities to come in and use our training facility on a fee basis.
And the nice thing about the public safety training facility too, if we can build it to the northwest portion of the city, it's going to bring police and fire and now the metro dispatchers all together too for cross training as well, because they all have to interact together.
And as the public, when they call 911, they don't know, because things run so smoothly. They know that when they need that, people come to their door and they help them, but all in the background, what's going on and what our EMS workers need. Do you see that the public would ever see any differences, even when you have this change?
I think that you can see better service, in my opinion, because the retention, if you go to their facility now, it's very tired. It's very worn out. It's kind of a dungeon, so to speak. Sure. And so to give new life to some of those employees with having a better place to work, being able to retain and train those employees is huge too, because that's a huge cost. That every time somebody leaves, it costs X amount of thousands of dollars. And so if you can retain just one employee on an annual basis, it's going to pay for itself very, very easily and very quickly for that. And so like Councilor Kiley said, they could use 20 workstations. Well, that means more jobs. That means more hiring. So I think that you could see service to be even better yet. If anyone has ever had the opportunity to watch a call take place, even look at it on YouTube, this is multitasking at its finest. And so making sure that those workstations make sense and that the public does not see any hiccups or anything when calling, because at the end of the day, when I call 911, I don't care where I'm calling. I want you at my door as fast as possible in the time of an emergency. And I think that's what is the most important thing for the public.
The dispatcher actually has the individual that called 911 in one ear, and then they're talking and communicating to the first responders and are listening to them into the other ear. So there's multiple things, and then they're doing a lot of other tasks in addition to that. So it's very complex, and it is very high stress environment.
And we will look forward to hearing more of this, because I don't think this will be the last time we hear about this topic. Let's move on to the special events ordinance. It was presented in November at an informational meeting. What is this ordinance, and how is it going to affect all of us in the city of Sioux Falls? Who likes to talk about this?
I'll talk about it a little bit. Currently, the police department, when they staff a special event for security, they're taking somebody off a duty shift and they're bringing him over. So what the police department has said, that is stressing their manpower, and they want to come up with a solution so they don't have to take people off shift, that they can bring people in on an overtime rate to do that. It makes a lot of sense to do that way. The rub is how it's paid for, how the overtime is paid for. Now, the police have come forward, along with some of the administration, to work out a system that the special event would pay for the police officers' services. Well, there's a little bit of consternation out there in the public, and with the council too, if that's absolutely the right thing to do at this point. I'm all for making sure that we don't take people off a duty shift to staff a special event. And I'm all for the police officers to get overtime to do that. How we pay for that, as I've told the other councilors, I don't think the soup is actually cooked yet. I think there's a lot of discussion that is going to go on before it's brought back to us, along with the people that are out there in the nonprofit community, along with the police department, city administration, that there's got to be some sort of compromise out there.
So just for our audience members that might not know what we're talking about, when we're talking about special events, it's like the St. Patrick's Day Parade or Jazz Fest or the Air Show, Festival of Bands, the Parade of Lights that all happen in downtown Sioux Falls or somewhere in Sioux Falls. Mm-hmm. You're calling in officers to work security and to work traffic control and things like that.
Correct. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, and as Councilor Sales stated, that they're coming from other duties, and right now that's from parks, it's from traffic, and it's from schools too. And we know what traffic is like and the need to have officers on the street. So that is a big concern of mine, as well as I think my fellow councilors, that we're pulling them from their regular job duties. A portion will still be provided to the event and the organizations. 2 officers, I believe, 2 hours each, and then beyond that, they would pay. I guess the other aspect of this that makes sense to me is as we continue to grow, the number of events that are being held throughout the city is also growing. And we're already expending close to $200,000 in support of these events, and that could just continue to grow in the future. So I do think that we have to address it in some way, shape, or form. Exactly how that's going to take place is yet to be seen.
I think the other component too that we didn't talk about in this, the way our ordinance is currently written is it doesn't allow for for-profit events. And so there, in the past, has been a few for-profit events that wanted to host a run or some sort of run. And our ordinance restricts that you have to be a nonprofit. And so why, I'm not really quite sure. But being able to say, hey, if somebody wants a for-profit event to come in and do it, let's allow that to happen. But where is the balance? If it's a for-profit, do they pay for security? If it's a nonprofit, they don't pay for it. I don't know. And, you know, the sausage is being made. We'll see what happens when this comes. I know there has been some concerns on both sides of it, but right now we're gathering the information to try to find out the best balance. And really, at the end of the day, it's priorities. But I 100% do not want to see us taking officers off the street to put in there. It should be an overtime thing. This was something changed when our budget got a little tight. It got tightened up and said no more overtime, and so this is kind of one of those effects that we saw. And is $240,000 for that service? Is that acceptable? Some in the community think, yeah, it's government. You should provide that service. It's something that we should absorb within our own budget. That's the conversation that we're having.
Some people think it's a quality of life issue, just like parks and recreation. And does this have anything to do with the events that are downtown, or does it not matter where they are in the city?
It really doesn't matter where it is. It's if you're impacting street closures, say you just have one on the bike trail, you may not need to have any additional security because you're not crossing streets or impacting traffic flow. And sometimes that's all it takes is just maybe rerouting your event a little bit to avoid some of those additional costs.
The air show and the Sioux Falls Marathon would be other examples too that are taking place elsewhere in the city, not just in downtown Sioux Falls.
Yeah. I would just add that the officers that are primarily being used for it, as I understand it, are like our school resource officers, in order to not affect, what's happening on the street, our street police. But it's making a very difficult job for them because they work all times of the night and day. Then, I mean, they're pulled off. They've got their regular job, and then they're pulled off, for evening work and all of this. That just that's again just not a pleasant job situation for them. And again, I agree with our council member Erickson that this was done when things were tight and they were trying to reduce the overtime. And now we've got this situation, and we have to look at it like everybody has talked about. Is it a quality of life thing that we just want to fund the overtime for, or is there more to this, and is this the route that we want to go?
Well, at this point, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Sioux Steel area. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mackey from Falls Community Health, here to talk to you today about frostbite. Frostbite is a serious condition that is caused by the freezing of body tissues. It can develop within minutes to exposed areas in cold temperatures. Areas most frequently affected include fingers, toes, and parts of the face. Symptoms include pain, dusky appearance of the skin, and blister formation. If any of these symptoms are noticed, it is important to seek emergent medical care to prevent further tissue damage. If you have any questions, please contact your physician or Falls Community Health.
Welcome back to Inside Town Hall, where we are having a roundtable discussion with City Councilor Rick Kiley, Kurt Sale, Janet Brecky, and Christine Erickson. Let's move on to the Sioux Steel tax increment financing. Explain a little bit. Who wants to take this on? Don't all raise your hand at once.
Well, I think the TIF portion of this, the tax increment financing, just to be clear right from the get-go, is for the parking ramp that they are proposing to build, and that's about a $25 million parking ramp out of a nearly $185 million overall project. The nice thing about the parking ramp, and I think the reason why it's a great place to invest a TIF, is that the ramp would be not only available for the hotel and the businesses that would be located at this site, but it would also be available to the public too. And especially with the pavilion being so close by now, that it would be just perfect for the crowds in the evenings that are coming to listen to the concerts. And so it would have
You mean the Levitt?
The Levitt Pavilion.
Levitt. Oh, yeah.
The Levitt Pavilion.
Yes.
And so that would be a great public service, as well as just an influx in tax revenues for the city.
Mm-hmm. And explain, how big is this area and what all can it entail? What do we have to look forward to, and what is the timeline?
Well, I can't speak for the developer, but I'll tell you a little bit of what I do know. They're going to put a hotel down there. It's going to be an A-class hotel, which fulfills some of the needs that I'm on Sports Authority Board that we need to bring the NCAA to the table in Sioux Falls. That's the one thing we can check off now. If this goes forward, which I believe it will, they're going to put 60,000 square feet convention center along with that down there. They're going to put office buildings, they're going to retail down there, and they're going to residential. It's going to be a huge development in a part of town that at one point you could say was blighted. So it's going to be right on the river, and that's why the Greenway, for us to complete that down there, is so huge. It's always been in a long-term plan for the city to get the Greenway done, but now we have developers stepping up in the Sioux Steel family to step up to say we're going to make a massive investment in downtown Sioux Falls. It's going to be really great. There's going to be side issues that we're going to have to deal with 4, 5, 6 years from now. Traffic is going to be one. We're going to develop this area in this downtown so dense at some point that people are going to say, well, how am I going to get in and out? Now, I know our traffic engineers are currently working on those solutions going forward, but I do know that it's going to create some congestion again for downtown Sioux Falls, but that's where the walkability part comes. So in the Sioux Steel area, along with the Cascade and along with else that's going on downtown, you'll be able to live downtown, work downtown, shop downtown, if you so choose to do that. I have relatives that come in from out of state and they hadn't been downtown for a long time, and they went downtown just before Christmas and they were just amazed at the transformation that's happened. So when you get developers like that and the family, the Sioux Steel family that's owned that for so many years, to invest $185 million, I think it's going to be, personally I think it's going to be awesome.
And I would just say, just think of it this way. It's really fun aesthetically. Imagine yourself at the Sioux Falls at the tower, looking back at Sioux Falls. This is going to be a dramatic change to our skyline. This is going to be the biggest thing that's happened to the skyline, that photograph in Sioux Falls for a long, long, long time. And I think it's fun for people to understand that. It's fun to think of it that way. And this is kind of a once in 100-year opportunity, to develop that skyline. And this is the kind of project any city would like to see do that.
I think the mixed use is the exciting component of it too, because all on one site you've got apartments, office, shopping, restaurants, entertainment, and on the River Greenway, which as we see that River Greenway continue to develop and revitalize really our river there, so much more activity. You see people biking and walking and activities that the city even produces and downtown Sioux Falls puts on. And just looking at some of the renderings of this project, and I know they're pretty pictures to begin with, however, when you look at it, it looks a lot like some of these other large cities with the outdoor dining spaces, have a cocktail, walk around, just be outside. And it's just a really exciting time to be able to be a part of a project such as this, because for so many years people have looked at that project or that site saying, when will that develop? When will we see some change? And this family has done great things in our community. They held for months. What does the community want to see in this site? They held open meetings with people all throughout the city saying, what do you want to see? This is your town. Yeah, it's our development, but what do you want to see? And so it really shows the community-driven mentality behind this development as well.
Yeah, I mean, to break it down, I guess, a little further, the Hotel and Convention Center, that's approximately $75 million of the overall project, and it's over 60,000 square feet, and it's going to be 7 floors, and so that's going to include bars and restaurants. And then you also, as Councilor Erickson stated, you have the office tower, which is actually going to be 9 floors of office space. And then, as I mentioned, the parking ramp is going to offer over 900 parking spaces that will serve the needs of the hotel, the convention center, the office space, the apartments, as well as the public throughout the day, as well as evenings and weekends. And then the apartments as well, too. There's going to be 100 apartments, and that's about little over 40 million of the overall project. So it's just going to be great. It's going to bring us back to a time in the early stages of the city of Sioux Falls when people congregated there, because it'll also connect us to the park that exists where people originally skated on the river above the falls, and it is going to be fabulous.
Are these going to be more selling points for the Convention and Visitors Bureau to go out and to bring in maybe conventions and visitors and more business?
You need to have Terry Ellis Schmidt come in here and give you that sales pitch. But yes, I just sat through the Event Center Campus Study Group, and that was one of the things that we could certainly use another 60,000 square feet downtown. It will not directly impact what's going on currently with the Convention Center and our long-range planning for that, because that needs to expand. But by having 60,000 square feet downtown is really going to help. And Councilor Kiley's talked about the parking ramp a couple times. The good concept, I think, aesthetically, is it's going to be wrapped around with offices and with residential. So you'll see parking on the inside if you're on the inside, but you won't see it from the street. So I think conceptually, that's pretty awesome.
One other thing I just would add in there is, we've talked about it being the Sioux Steele family, which it's not the Steele family or the Sioux family, it's the Risen family. And so I just want to make sure that we note that instead of referring to them as the Sioux Steele family.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yes.
Well, and like I said, we always hear more about these topics as they more develop okay, we just have a couple of minutes left. Let's talk about the legislative session. What are some of the priorities for the city of Sioux Falls, and have you been visiting with legislators?
We have. So when I came on the council 6 years ago, I'm a former legislator. I say I'm a recovering legislator because I was in care for 2 years. One of the things that was passionate to me is that we need to build better relationships between the city council and our legislators. And so we've been doing that for many years now. And so we meet with area towns as well as, so it's not just Sioux Falls, it's really about the region and the county. So it's Lincoln County, Minnehaha County, and a bunch of other communities around Sioux Falls. We sit down, we meet, we draft some priorities, and then we present those to the legislators as well as our board for the Municipal League for lobbying efforts. And so it's been a great way for us to build those relationships and really get some traction. We've enjoyed great success from a lot of different legislative priorities over the year. One of the things is a reliable state radio system. You heard in Noam's address that this is a priority of hers as well, and so we feel a lot of great relief for our public safety partners in Sioux Falls, making sure that they have the best tools that they need to be able to respond to a disaster should our radio system go out, that we've got that emergency backup. So for me, I'm excited about this legislative session and the potential of that maybe seeing some change.
And we're hopeful, too, in the final quarter of 2020 that we will have our triage center open, so that we just want to be sure that laws are favorable for the operation, that there's nothing that maybe will impede our efforts to treat addiction, both drug and alcohol, because we know how serious of an issue that is within our community. Right. So look forward to the next session.
And we will be hearing more about that throughout the next couple of months, and find out what has happened and what's good for Sioux Falls and the surrounding communities. All right, well, thank you all for joining us, and that is our time for Inside Town Hall. Thanks for watching. For more information, you can go to siouxfalls.org.